ADHD, the specific learning disabilities, and then the autism spectrum disorders.
All right, so I'm just going to run through, if you will, some definitions for you, and I know we've already had some discussions about whether or not how we should be defining them, and organizations, and who defines them and how we define them, but it does help us give a general kind of focus of who these students are, who these athletes are, and give us some common terminology, if you will. Specific learning disabilities really refers to basically a heterogeneous group of disorders. It's not just one. You can't characterize it with only certain kinds of descriptors, but it basically has to do with some significant difficulties in the area of listening, speaking, reading, writing, problem-solving, reasoning, mathematical kinds of skills. And the term is ADHD with three basic subtypes. We have an inattentive type, hyperactive impulsive type, and a combination type. And this all comes from the DSM, obviously, and we need to make sure that we understand those different types. So the inattentive, these are the ones that are typically, we see more girls that are diagnosed with the inattentive type, but they're easily forgetful. They forget directions. They forget their head if it wasn't attached. They lose things. They seem to make careless mistakes, but it's really not about carelessness. It's about that attentional focus. The problem is not that they can't focus. The problem is that they're focusing on many, many, many different things simultaneously. How many of you, when you're on the internet and you're just kind of scrolling around and you find something that you want to look at, you go, oh, that's a cool link. What do? You click on it, right? You click on it. So you go and you explore, blah, blah, blah. You eventually, however, do you usually come back to where you want to be? They're interrupting people. They're the, we have a young man that even when he comes over to our house, he's a baseball player, but even when he comes over to our house, there's no way he can sit still. So he's talking to us, he's got his ball, and he's just up and he's talking, but he's able to manage. And so those are some of the hallmarks and the characteristics of that hyperactive part. The impulsive is obviously the blurting out, the interrupting, the difficulty waiting their turn. So when we talk about strategies, waiting and downtime is going to be really, really, really difficult for these kids. The other thing is, look right down there at the bottom where it said increased risk-taking behaviors. That's why Robin found this little kid chasing after the ball. You know, no matter how many times this child has heard, look before you run into the road, unless there's some kind of other cues going on, that's a young one, they don't even think about that.
Diagnosed than girls, and this generally starts in terms of classroom management, because they're in the classroom, they're doing the hyperactivity part of it. So the teachers are like, okay, let's go get this child taken care of instead of, you know, the inattentive type. It's also interesting to see, these are parent reports that are state by state. So you can see the difference here, like Nevada is lower than North Carolina in terms of prevalence. So just kind of something to take into account. It's not necessarily true. So, and especially you can see the drop in 15 to 17 years, not as many are taking some form of a medication. So now we're going to do a little activity here with this one. It's another video. I want you might need to move forward to try to read it, but you're going to read the screen and we're going to have some questions for you at the end.
Going to be some comprehension questions. So you got to pay attention to the story.
Pay attention. Oops.
Kinds of strategies, the modeling, the demonstration, the sequencing, the ongoing feedback that you provide the athlete and the students, and that's critical to their understanding of what your expectations are. Drill and practice work particularly well for these individuals. They get it. It's often done at their own pace, one-on-one, and they're able to get a lot of feedback going on. The problem comes when we get to the next level, because now you are expected to implement these same drills, these same techniques in a competition. And that's where the problems come. That's where it begins breaking down for them. So what we need to have for these individuals are some kind of strategy instructions so that they know what kind of skills, what kind of techniques that they can pull out. Oh yeah, remember this. This is what I was supposed to utilize. This is happening now. And it has to be almost at that automatic level. Otherwise, they can't stop midway through and say classes. So again, very similar to students and athletes with learning disabilities, that explicit instruction is really critical. But what you'll notice here, we've got to focus on that attention. How are we going to focus that attention? How do they know when this is an important object lesson to learn? How do they know when this is something the coach really wants you to focus in on? And more importantly, that promoting and that persistence, because kids with ADHD, they don't like drill and practice. They're going to say, forget it. You know, I'm done with that one. I'm moving right on to the next one, and I'm moving right on to the next one. So they may do really well in matches and in competition, but don't like to focus.